Your favorite producer might be a victim of beat theft, or even worse, they might be a thief themselves. The music industry is full of fraud, but what rarely ever gets talked about are the stories where producers allegedly steal beats from others. So today let's talk about the biggest beat robbery stories, how they happened, and for fun, we'll even break down how these stolen beats were made. But to make sure I don't get sued, my YouTube editor will put this disclaimer over top in case any lawyers are watching. Thank you. And it is possible I might be in danger after putting this out. Who knows what shadowy forces are lurking. So I'll ask from you as a like or a subscribe. It makes it worth risking my life. All for those sweet, sweet imaginary numbers. Now let's start with the first beat and probably the most outrageous, absurd story on this list. As you may know, many famous producers get their start working underneath others. Pharrell worked under Teddy Riley, Timbaland worked under Devontae Swing, and Kanye West did the same. He worked under this guy, Derek D. Angeletti.
So he bought me a DAT tape of Kanye and it had like maybe 15, 20 tracks on it. And I was like, wow. And we rocked for a little while. So I managed them. I got him, some placements.
And one of those placements was for Nas on a song called Papa Was a Player.
My old dad important to the family structure, provider, God. My mom's a queen at Universal Team Civilizer.
This beat has that unmistakable Kanye sound to it, but unfortunately it also has some shady accusations behind it. When you break this beat down, you can hear some really classic Kanye techniques. First, we have drums that have that early Kanye feel to them, a bit stiff with digital sounding percussion. Then we move on to the sample, which has Kanye written all over it. And this is actually one of the reasons why D. chose to work with Kanye.
What he was looking for in samples was a little different. I knew that none of us was doing that, so I was like, man, he kind of dope.
So here's how this sample was used. We have this chopped up layer as the foundation. And then we have this small second layer sitting on top. This helps the loop's start and end point seem less obvious since this delay carries the sound over. This is just a great loop masking technique here. I've covered Kanye's sampling techniques before in an old video, by the way. If you're interested, I'll leave a link to that in the description box. But overall, we have a pretty great beat. But here's where the problem starts. The problem of not being credited.
The beef came in is when he started using this term called ghost producing, which I hate, which I felt was disrespectful. Yeah. Because ghost means you're not seen or heard.
Wait, did he get credit for the stuff he did?
Not only did he get credit, he got money. He got signed to Rockefeller as a result of it. So how are you ghost producing?
But did he get credit too? Of
course he did.
Now, when you look at the credits today, you do see Kanye's name is present. But if we look at the original credits when this album first came out, well, Kanye's name is nowhere to be seen. And this is where the problem between these two began. Eventually, Kanye and D. did settle their differences. I'll explain why a little bit later, but there's another part of this story that I need to tell first, a part that's even more absurd. So years pass and Kanye ends up getting much bigger, producing for a lot of other artists, and we see him end up doing the exact same thing to another producer. One of my favorite Kanye beats growing up was Down and Out for Cameron.
Hey, yo, street mergers, I legislated the nerve. I never hated on murders premeditated, absurd, I hesitated, absurd.
A very Kanye sounding beat. Here is the sample that was used. The sample gets pitched up and we have some really intricate chopping here. Again, many Kanye ideas in this beat. The drums and especially the bass line really help bring this beat together. So again, an excellent Kanye beat here, except it's not really a Kanye beat. When we look at the credits now, we see Kanye is credited alongside a guy named Brian All Day Miller. This is the guy that actually made the beat. But once again, that's not how this track was originally credited. You can see we have Down and Out, produced by Kanye, and that's it. This is the first type of problem that you see a lot. Smaller producers working for bigger ones and at times not getting properly credited. And there have been a lot of salty producer fights that have happened over this. But this is just one version of this problem. There's an entirely different kind of problem that's also common. In fact, this happened to the legendary J Dilla.
Oh, you know what's a good example? Check for the, what is it, Why I Gotta Be Like That, Farsight. Okay. Then listen to Do for Love by Tupac. I basically chopped my record.
So this is a really interesting one. Let's start by listening to the original song in question, the beat produced by J Dilla. Now, according to Dilla, the beat for Tupac's Do for Love chopped up his record.
But now I'm searching for commitment and other arms. I wanna shelter you from harm. Don't be alarmed.
So let's see if there's any validity to this. First off, when you listen to the intro of Dilla's beat, you can hear a really familiar sound. If you pitch this guitar lick down a semitone and isolate it, here is what you get. This sounds exactly like the main sound in Do for Love. And before you think, well, maybe they just used the same sample, this beat's almost been out for 30 years now, and still nobody on the entirety of the internet has found the source to Dilla's sound in this beat. It seems unlikely that the producers for Do for Love found this exact same sample and used it as well, but it is possible. Having said that, you'll notice some more eerie similarities. For example, here is the bass from Dilla's beat. Now, if you take this bass, EQ it, and resample it, listen to what I've created using this exact same sound. This sounds like the bass for Do for Love, and once we bring in some Fender Rhodes, this sounds almost exactly like the Do for Love loop. The only thing missing at this point are the drums, and even here you have some more striking similarities. Here is the snare from Do for Love. And when you take Dilla's snare from his beat and layer this hi-hat over top, again, unusually similar. So did Soulshock and Carlin, the producers for Do for Love, take Dilla's beat and chop it up without crediting him? The similarities are really striking. I'll share my thoughts on what I think happened shortly. But there's a third variation of this problem that we need to cover, which is best displayed by this song.
I made the change from a common thief to up close and personal with Robin Leach, and I'm far from cheap.
This is Pete Rock's official remix of the hit song Juicy by Notorious B.I.G. But there is some controversy behind this remix, as Pete Rock explains.
You know, when Puff started doing the bad boy thing, he brought Big to me. And I had this Entombed record, you know, Juicy Fruit. And I was making the beat because I knew they were coming, but I didn't know that he would like that beat. At that time, I was a little wet behind the ears, so I didn't get the proper credit I should have got. But at the same time, you know, I did do the remix, and you know, I do tell people that the original belongs to me too. You know, the whole idea, the whole thing.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah, rest in peace, B.I.G.
Right, right.
So according to Pete Rock, he made this beat first in front of Puff Daddy, and then Puff went on and made his own version using the exact same sample, which then became Juicy. Puff's version is much more simple, basically sticking to the original sample. So these are the different pieces that were used for his beat. Pete Rock's version, however, has a little bit more going on. You can hear we have these bigger drums and the subby bass line in Pete Rock's version, but this is where things get interesting. According to Poke, the co-producer of Juicy, Puff Daddy came to him with the idea of using this sample. And when asked about Pete Rock's claim of theft, his point was that it's possible Puff wanted the beat to just sound differently than what Pete Rock made. And this is the problem with this story, and honestly, all of these stories so far. It's easy to hear this and automatically think, oh, Puff Daddy is a thief and a scoundrel. But what Poke says here really raises some interesting questions. Is it still considered theft if a producer wants to use the same sample as another producer, but just wants to use it differently? Look, Pete Rock is a legendary producer. It's possible Puff Daddy thought it might be disrespectful to ask Pete Rock to change his beat, so maybe he thought he was doing the ethical thing here. Same thing with the Kanye incident. You might think, oh, Kanye is just greedy and wanted all the credit for himself on Down and Out, but he actually addresses this in the years following its release.
Hey, this is actually one of my favorite beats that I didn't really do. Brian All Day Miller did this beat. And he was supposed to get co-producer credit on it, and then they didn't give him credit on the album. They just had my name, and everybody come up to me in the party and say, "Oh, I love this beat," and I would say, "Hey, thanks."
So according to Kanye, he did tell them that he wasn't the only producer on this beat, but this information just wasn't included on the album. Again, it's hard to know what fully happened here, but maybe this is why Kanye and D-Dot settled their differences. After going through this, Kanye may have realized that the other producer might not be the right person to blame, and none of this is ever black and white. Aphex Twin, another producer, got one of his songs sampled on Blame Game off Dark Fantasy, but when he called Kanye's camp to ask about it, he was basically told to get lost. I bring this up because this is a clear situation of being shady and unethical. But is it Kanye that's treating him like this, or is it a greedy manager or label exec that just doesn't want to pay for the sample, unbeknownst to Kanye? Same thing with the Dilla situation. It's possible that the producers did disclose that they sampled Dilla, but maybe a label exec or manager decided not to say anything out of pure greed. All of these stories remind me of an adage that I use all the time, Hanlon's razor, which says never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. I don't feel right saying that all these producers stole and it was all out of greed, but I do feel confident in saying at least that there are some stupid idiots that work at these labels, and they might be the reason for many of these problems and miscommunications. But here's the good news. Thankfully, as technology has progressed, these problems are no longer happening. With the current age of streaming, we now have accurate and fair data, and producers are finally getting the credit that they deserve. Oh wait, never mind. Let me know your thoughts on these stories. Which of these do you think is theft and which were just incompetence? Leave a comment down below. And if you enjoyed this video, I recommend clicking on the one next to me. In it, I talk about even more stories in the world of beat making. Hit like and subscribe, and if you enjoyed this video, I will see you next week, hopefully. Bye bye.